Hey you guys, it's your girl Kamika. Welcome back to the Love Makeba official YouTube channel. I'm back in the studio in the kitchen here, and I am blending up, pouring the ingredients for a little bit of Kissed moisturizing body whips. Make sure I got that. I'm doing that because we've been getting orders for them, and like I had said in the previous video, I want to make sure that everything is getting done and we don't end up with a backlog of orders. I want to make sure everybody's stuff is getting out timely. So I also wanted to let you guys in the kitchen a little bit. As you can see in the back, there's all of our equipment and all of our herbs. I mean, they go all the way down. And all of our ingredients, because we only use the best here. Only use the best, right? So, what did I want to talk about this afternoon? Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about, this is a little bit of a chamomile distillation. I wanted to talk about grief, and not really grief in and of itself, but preparing yourself for a little bit of grief. I know lovemakeba is a hair and skincare brand, but as I often say to you all, it's about holistic beauty, and so it's about making sure that the person is whole. So, gotta get that right. Sorry, you guys. Okay, all right. Chamomile is really excellent for soothing your skin, calming your skin. It helps to take away the itchies, right? So, look, let me pay attention to what I'm doing. So I was sitting here and I was like, what am I going to talk about? Because if I didn't say it before, I'm very committed to being committed to these VEDAS, and I want to make sure that as we get through the tail end, that I'm still giving you conversations that are useful for you and that you can maybe use for the future. I hope you'll be able to use it for the future. And so I was sitting here, and a lot of times what I do is I will listen to a YouTube video or two in the background, kind of as some noise. It's a great way to learn some things without having to really put all of your attention on it. It's a great way to multitask, even though I am cutting back on the amount of multitasking that I actually do. I'm really trying to be present in things, but nevertheless, it's good noise for the background. And so I was sitting and listening a little bit to my girl Melyssa Ford, who is one of the co-hosts of the Hollywood Unlocked show. It's not really a podcast. It's podcast-like, especially now since they are, doing the remote thing like the rest of us. But it's a show where they let me make sure I got that. Where they interview guests, and for a minute now, Melyssa has been gone, and she's been gone because she recently lost her mother. She lost her mother to cancer. Her mother had a very aggressive form of cancer, and she just recently died. And in the course, so I think in the last 8 months she's died. And in the course of her dying, Melyssa, I believe, being her only child, has had to go, of course, and take care of her mother's business. Her mother was single, and she was her only heir. So she had to go take care of her business. And at first I was telling myself, oh, you are not about to watch this. You are not about to watch this. And then I was like, well, yeah, you can watch this because, not to say that I'm a G at this thing, but I've had enough death in my life, including my mother's death last year, to know I can handle it. But for a minute there, while Melyssa was talking, I was starting to catch myself. I was starting to cry, right? So just in case you guys don't know, our Kiss Moisturizing Body Whips are actually a buttercream, meaning that they have an aloe vera water and chamomile base to them, and it's a nice blend with oils. So it's not what you would consider a pure butter. So that's why I call them our moisturizing body whips, because they infuse your body with hydration along with moisture. They spread that oil onto your body, and it allows for your skin to stay soft and smooth and heal at the same time with that aloe vera and that chamomile. All right, so let me keep going. So Melyssa, I didn't get to hear the whole thing. I'm still listening to her, but I anticipate that what she's getting ready to tell Hollywood Unlocked is that she's going to be leaving the show. And the reason she's going to be leaving the show is because she wants to take this time to really rebuild her own life and find herself. Because if you all are not familiar with Melyssa, she also, about 2 years ago, had a really horrific car accident in an open top Jeep that was flipped over a couple of times and put her in critical condition. And, I was never like a fan of Melyssa Ford, but she's very likable. And so I've just, started to like her on Hollywood Unlocked and just have continued to watch it because she's a good part addition to the show. So I don't know if she does decide to leave, what they're going to do once she's gone, because she's a very good balance to Jason, who can be a little off the chain, but it's his show, and DJ Damage, who is just the sweetest thing. She's a good balance to the two of them. Damage is just so even keel, right? It's funny. But anyway, so Melyssa was just talking about something that I've had extensive conversations with family and friends about, and that is before my mom passed last year, and why I have been able to not get over it, but move on with my life so easily, is because for years before she passed, I took the time to get to know who Martha was. My mother's name was Martha. And so I took the time to get to know who Martha was years before she died. I was very intentional about finding out who she was. And so I would make a point of spending time with her. Cocoa butter. Oh my gosh. If y'all haven't, we got some good shea butter in here that I just put in here. I didn't show you guys that. And then now I'm adding in a bit of the cocoa butter. With all that extra vitamin E that is just so healing to the skin. You guys, this is going to be a little longer video probably, because I'm talking and let's see, let me get this measured out properly. Okay, because I'm talking and measuring at the same time. So I took the time to sit down and get to know my mother. I wanted to know who she was, what she was like before me. I used to think that I was so arrogant to think that her life really depended on me. I did a lot for my mom. I took a lot of responsibility for her, especially after my father died. I in a sense, inadvertently became my mom's husband in a sense and caretaker. So she traveled with me. She called me about budgeting and money concerns. I handled, the maintenance around the house. We did all of that. I did all of that for her. And so that I would not miss out on anything, I began to really inquire about who she was. Like, what were you like before you met my dad? Or what made you like my dad? Or what was your, I always knew her favorite color was blue, but, what's your favorite drink? As a kid, you assume you know your parents because you see what they drink. But do you know why they drink that if your parents imbibed, right? My parents were drinkers, and so I would think that I knew what her favorite drink was, but then she would explain to me, oh, no, that wasn't my favorite drink. It's just that, when you kids start growing up, we couldn't buy the expensive alcohol anymore, so we started getting the cheaper alcohol. And so, Canadian Mist or Paul Masson became my drink. And I didn't like Crown Royal because it was too hard on the belly and it give you rot gut or whatever they would say. Like, I don't want the Crown Royal, Hennessy people come and look after me. But I took the time to really sit down and get to know who my mom was, what she liked to do in school, where she went to high school, who were her best friends, did she ever have a crush on anybody, certain friends that came around, what she liked about them, certain friends that didn't come around anymore. Why don't they come around anymore? Girl, let me tell you. So my mother would always, begin to tell me things and be her true self, not Kamika's mother. And she would, at the same time, I found that as I continued to ask her questions, my mother began to get a new lease on life. She began to start making choices for her, not just for us as kids, because we were all adults living in our own homes, doing our own thing. And one of the things that used to drain me a lot about my mother before I started this exercise was that I felt like she was becoming childlike, because it was almost as if she was afraid to make a move or afraid to make a decision or afraid to do what I needed her to do on her own. She was afraid to, let's say if she wanted to get improvements done on her home, she was afraid to get them done, or just not afraid as in scared of what I would say, but afraid to make a mistake or afraid to trust her own ideas of what would be pretty or what would be nice or what would be she would like and what would be suitable for her. But when I began to ask my mother who she was and about her history without judgment, ask her questions as a woman, ask her questions as an adult, allow her to not feel imprisoned with my ideas as her child, not a child, but as her child, that she could have only have ever loved my father. When I began to allow her the freedom to do that, this new, beautiful, outgoing person came out. This empowered person came out. One of the things that had happened after my father had passed, because my father passed 10 years before my mother did, no, just almost 9 years before she did. One of the things that had happened was my mother had entered into another relationship, but it was not a relationship that was of quality in my opinion, or even in her opinion. But because she was afraid of being alone and because she was afraid of kind of making those decisions by herself, she allowed herself to stay in a relationship that wasn't abusive. It just was not ideal. It just wasn't an ideal relationship. She allowed herself to stay in it because she didn't want to be alone and she didn't want to be forgotten and she didn't want to live life by herself. Being alone and living life by yourself are two different things, and it's a hard way to go. We as women, actually, people are not designed to be nomadic like that by themselves. Singular nomads. We are designed to be in community and to work in concert with one another. We feel the love of God through other people. So when all of us were going on and living our own lives and getting into our own relationships and doing our own thing, she was starting to feel alone and lonely and isolated, and so she got into a relationship that wasn't the ideal. But when I began to talk to her and empower her to be herself again, without her having fear that she would either make me feel ashamed or make me feel like I was like she didn't desire us as kids, or make me feel just the crazy entitlements that we have as kids, because as kids we'll have a lot of entitlements. When I was able to do that, she began to be empowered and started making decisions for her future that did not require relationships that were not in her best interest. She began to dream and aspire for certain things. She began to want to redecorate her house. She began to say, I want to get a new car. She began to say, oh, we're, just put some money on my books and me and your auntie or my friends or whatever, go hang out over here. We go do this. She began to build relationships that had been broken before, because you can have relationships with friends where you just grow apart. There's nothing that has happened between you, but you just grow apart. But then there's been so much time that has passed that you feel weird or strange going back to them. Well, she was able to start going back and doing those. She was able to drive in her car without the needing of assistance. And she was also able to heal because she had had very bad cataract. And then she was blind for about a year. And then the year after that, she was able to really get a new lease on life, see again, drive herself again. And I had enough income to where she could be like, well, she had her own income, and then she would be like, but my daughter is Miss God Rocks, right? Ain't true, but still she felt that way. So I bring all of this up because Melyssa was sharing with the guys that she felt so bad because she never took the time to find out who her mother was. And I remember recently, before I had heard about Melyssa, another friend or associate's mother had just passed. And I remember I wrote her a long post on Instagram and shared with her how her mother was her own individual person. And I hope that if she hadn't taken time, had the opportunity to get to know who her mother was, to now start looking through her mother and asking her mother's friends, questions about her, so she can form an opinion as to who her mother was as an individual and as a woman and as a person, before the kids came, or just what she liked. When you learn to do that with your parents, you will learn that, number one, you'll learn that the world doesn't revolve around you. But secondly, you will learn that this is probably a really great and dynamic person who has many facets that I have not seen. And so therefore I should stop taking advantage of them, or even stop putting them in the corner with just some elders. I want to get to know you. I want to spend time with you. I want to be your friend. And I'm so grateful that over the years I was able to get to know my mother, and become friendly with her. Especially since as she was aging, she was becoming more my daughter than I was her daughter, because I was so responsible for her. But I'm very grateful that I was able to get to know her as a person, because I actually liked my mother as a person. Another reason I'm happy for it is because years before I even started this exercise, before I even had the wherewithal to think about anybody really outside of myself, I remember when my father was alive, me and my mother got into a huge argument. And the views that I had of my mother then was that she was wild and reckless and didn't care about anybody, and that she was selfish and blah, 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 blah. All the stuff a young daughter often thinks about her mother when she either doesn't get her way, or when there is, for me, it wasn't me getting my way. It was more of my mother and my father, who had been married for 30 plus years, were having a disagreement. And I sided with my father because my mother had shown weaknesses in areas. And because I'm such a strong person, I didn't understand her weaknesses at the time. And then years later, God gave me the grace and His mercy to be able to, I'm not going to cry, to be able to build that personal relationship with her, where I was able to see from her perspective, understand where she was coming from, and all the things that she had gone through, and how she was actually a very strong woman, but who had to learn things on her own. And I was able to apologize to her, and I was able to tell God thank you, because it was a blessing on both sides. One, my mother recognized that I actually saw her, and that I didn't think she was like the Wicked Witch of the West, and I didn't think that she was unlovable. And then me, I was able to honor my mother and give her years later, a beautiful funeral. And then, but before that, want to spend time with her, want to be around her. Got her a passport so I could take her around the world with me. But unfortunately, her illnesses didn't allow it. But we were able to build a friendship. And I think her building a friendship with me gave some of my sisters the ability to build a friendship with her as well, because they they knew it was possible. So, yeah, that's what kind of crossed my mind. And so, what I've been teaching younger women that I am mentoring who have contentious relationships with their mothers is not just the biblical honor your mother and father that your days might be long. That's important, and that's where the heart of everything lies. But understand that your mother is her own person, and she makes decisions based on how she was raised and the things she's experienced, and she lived a life well before you came. And that treat your mother with the same love and respect, and give her the same dignity that you would any other woman that you were interacting with or trying to build a relationship or trying to get in their good graces. Stop taking her for granted. Even if you have the most jankiest, untrustworthy, dishonorable mother there is, learn who she is and what made her her. You always still got to follow put up proper boundaries, and hold to them. But that doesn't mean that doesn't disqualify you from needing to get to know who she is, to be a blessing and to receive blessings from her. I am grateful to say that because I took that time, I was able to come through my grieving process without any regrets and without any regrets for how I treated her, how we interacted, or that I didn't get to say what was on my heart and mind. I told her I loved her regularly. The only thing I wish I would have done is that I would have told her even more that I loved her, that I would have hugged her more. But she didn't really raise me or us in our home to be huggers. But later in the years, I noticed that she wanted more hugs. And so now I don't withhold hugs from people unless I don't like them, right? And now I also recognize how important time is to me. Time is a serious love language for me. Time and gifts, right? Time and gifts. But I love spending time with people, which is why people will come to my house and they'll come at, let's say, noon, and they won't leave till midnight, because I love having them here, and then I love making them comfortable so that if they want to get whatever they can off their hearts, that they can. So that is Beta 24. We have a few more of these to go, but I just wanted to share that with you, because here's the last thing. When my mother died, Melyssa mentioned something, and it was the same thing I had said to this other friend. When my mother died, I was pissed. I was angry. I was angry at life. I was angry at God. Not because I thought he had taken anything, but because as someone's child whose body you shared. I mean, a relationship with a mother is not like a relationship with a father, which is very and equally important, but it's different. You shared somebody's body from anywhere from, let's say, 4 months, I think that's the earliest somebody can be viable, to 10 months, maybe my nephew, I think, was like 11 months, right? He was huge too when he was born. But you shared the insides of someone's body. You have breathed when they breathed. Your heart has beat when their heart has beaten. They had gas, you had gas. You bathed in the hormones that were flowing through their body. And so you felt how they felt. And you were completely 1,000,001% reliant on somebody, unlike anything you will ever be out here on earth, out of the womb. And so when she died, same thing with Melyssa's mother, I'm assuming, the same thing with anybody else whose mother probably has passed that you had a relationship with. When they die, you feel the detachment. You feel it. You feel the spiritual, in a sense, umbilical cord being severed. You feel like there is nobody else, no husband, no wife, no children, no father, nobody else that could ever care for you or have your back. Even if you have, like I said, a contentious relationship with your mother, when they die, it's almost as if you don't belong to anyone. Anyone. And that may be different, a little different for those that are married and in relationships that are very intimate, but you really feel like you don't belong to anyone and you wonder if you ever could belong to anyone. And so I thank God that I cleave to God even more. And then the people who were for my life just really came and began to support me. But it is a hard thing to have a mother die. And I was enraged. I was so angry. I was cussing. And I'm not, anybody who knows me knows that I don't cuss. But I just, any facades that I had, any airs that I had, they all just went away. And I was just so angry. And then I had to get into the business of death. And it's so funny how Melyssa talks about it, because these were the actual words that I used that nobody else had previously told me. And so I guess they must be universal. They just come to you when they need to, when it's the appropriate time. But I'm not going to go any further into this. I got to finish making this kiss butter. But I wanted to encourage any of you who are dealing with mothers, especially parents, but mothers especially that have recently died or are terminal, and so death seems to be inevitable, or if they have died in the past but nobody ever really gave you a space to grieve or to talk about it, or they really couldn't put to words your feelings and empathize with you. I want to just tell you that I empathize with you, and that when you begin to just allow your mother to be who she was, and you begin to delve into, ask questions and find out how she got there without any judgments, you will begin to heal, and you will begin to release any pain and any pent up frustrations, and you'll also be a lot freer. I think I'm a lot freer in my conversations. I'm not as I'm usually a very PC person, but since she's died, I'm not as PC. I'm PC, but not as PC. Now I really walk in grace. I'm a lot more lively, a lot less prideful, a lot less concerned about my image and being a perfectionist and how I look. And then there's also a hunger and a grind in me like I've never had before, because I don't have my ace in the hole anymore. My mother would sell everything to make sure I was okay. My mother would give her life to make sure that the business that I now run would be, that I would have it, right? My mother had actually said to me, because I had a bigger, more expensive home, and she actually said, and I was starting a business, and then I was so pissed about the corporate job that I had, and then I left that and began to have a little bit of money problems, and my mom said, oh, we'll sell the house that we've had now for nearly 40 years that I now have, but we'll sell that and just pay off your house, and I'll come live with you. And I remember in my mind having two thoughts. The bougie part of me was like, because she liked to burn down and tear up stuff. You ain't come to my nice house. I'll come see you. I didn't say that, but I was thinking that. But that was about 30% of what I was thinking. The other 70% was, I didn't want to expedite her death by moving her from a home that she's had for nearly 40 years that was familiar to her and comfortable to her, just so I could have a dream. But that's what mothers do. And I thank God for her, because now I'm living my dream. And I just I'm not going to keep going because I got to bring it back, because, oh my God, I got to get this stuff blended. But I just want to encourage you. And if you want to be a blessing to others or bless yourself, put your story about grief in the comment section. Tell us what you've learned. Tell us how you're coping with it. And if you need prayer, put that down there as well, so that those who read it may run with it, right? And yeah, I think that's it. But my heart goes out to Melyssa Ford and to all of the other beautiful sons and daughters who have lost elders, mothers and elders this year. I've been very concerned about the elders since COVID has started. since before COVID started. Actually, I was talking to one of my elders about it. Very concerned about keeping them safe because we need that tribal knowledge. We need that griot history. But yeah, I hope this video has been helpful to you guys. I love you guys much. Bye.